Had to check that thing, man. I got my memory card in there. You know what I mean? But this is the story here, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that last video, but he got convicted. You know what I mean? But this is the story. The newlywed trans infects her husband with HIV. And not only that, didn't even tell her husband she was a transgender and she had HIV. Let's listen to the story, y'all.
Crowds of music festival goers filled the streets of downtown Austin. Sage Carroll was wiping down tables in the open part of the Magnolia Cafe, glancing at the festival goers passing by. Her shift was ending in 2 hours, and she was thinking of staying to listen to some band. Tall and slender, with a lock of red hair gathered in a careless bun, she attracted the attention of the visitors. The owner of the cafe appreciated her for her professionalism and ability to find a common language with any client. The last 3 years after moving to Austin had been difficult, but now Sage felt like she belonged. Another wave of customers came in from the street. A tall man in a plaid shirt stood out among them, his blonde hair ruffled by the wind. He took a table by the window and pulled out a laptop computer. Sage headed toward him. "Good morning, what will you be ordering?" The man looked up from the screen, and Sage froze for a moment. He had an open, disposed look in his brown eyes. "Hi, double espresso and perhaps your signature turkey sandwich." "Excellent choice. I'm Sage. I'll be your waiter tonight." "Landon." He smiled. "Is it always this lively around here?" "Only during the festival. It's usually quieter." As Sage prepared her order, she watched the new customer with an edge of her eye. He was clearly a local no festival paraphernalia, and his laptop gave him away as someone who'd come to work. When she brought coffee, Landon suddenly asked, "Are you going to the concerts yourself?" "Thought I'd stop by after my shift. I own a coffee shop a couple blocks from here. I can recommend a great band. They play at 9 on the stage at Mohawk." A young man with tattoos on his arms approached the table. "Landon, there you are. I've been looking all over for you." "Ah, Finn. Meet Sage." Finn gave her a quick glance and nodded dryly. "Hi, Landon, we need to discuss supplies." "Have a seat. Order something." Landon gestured to a vacant chair. "Sage, can we get another espresso?" Landon glanced in her direction periodically throughout the rest of the day, and before he left a generous tip and a note with the stage address and time of the band's performance. Sage smiled, tucking the note into her apron pocket. Something told her this was the beginning of something interesting.
Sage.
When she stepped outside after her shift, the March evening enveloped the city in a chill. Music seemed to be...
A transgender named Sage. I would have knew something was up right there.
Coming from every bar and club. Sage headed towards Mohawk, thinking about the brown eyes and warm smile of the man who owned a coffee shop somewhere nearby. After that meeting at the festival, Austin had been transformed for Sage. Every street now breathed new possibilities. She and Landon had started seeing each other almost every night after her shifts at the Magnolia. He would close his coffee shop, and they would go out to explore the city as if they were both here for the first time. One such evening, they were sitting in a food truck on South Congress, eating tacos and watching bats fly out from under the bridge. Landon talked about his move to Austin 5 years ago, about saving up to open a coffee shop while working as a barista at chain establishments. "You know, I'm not from around here either," Sage admitted, wiping hot sauce off her lips. "Moved from Louisiana 3 years ago. Needed a fresh start." Landon didn't question the reasons for the move, and she was grateful for that. Instead, he suggested a walk along the river. Evening Austin enveloped them in its special atmosphere, a mix of live music from the bars, the smell of barbecue and magnolia blossoms. But every Tuesday crashed into this idyll with a sharp reminder of reality. Dr. Harper Reed, her attending physician, always greeted Sage in her office with the same calm smile. "Your vitals are stable," she said as she reviewed her test results. "What a man. He's amazing, kind, considerate. We've been dating for a month. And you haven't told him? I'm afraid he won't understand, that he'll turn away." Dr. Reed set the papers aside. In 15 years of practice, she'd seen many such stories. "Look, Sage, modern therapies make the virus undetectable. With the right approach, the risks are minimal, but he needs to know. I understand. It's just, for the first time in a long time, I feel really happy. I don't want to ruin that. After the appointment, Sage sat in her car in the clinic parking lot for a long time. Her phone buzzed with a message from Landon. He was calling her to see a local band in concert on Friday. She smiled as she looked at the screen.
Got Lance in the dark
The
like a
smile came out
motherfucker.
sad. The days flew by. They walked around the botanical gardens where Landon talked about his passion for photography. They ate dinner in small restaurants where everyone knew each other. Once they spent an entire day at Lake Travis, sunbathing and talking about everything in the world. Every time Landon touched her hand or leaned in for a kiss, something inside Sage clenched. She'd learned to masterfully avoid intimacy, making up reasons and excuses. He was patient and never pressured. There was always Finn at his coffee shop, which she now frequented in the mornings. He made great coffee, but Sage could read something akin to wariness in his gaze. She was used to that kind of reaction from people, though. "Why don't you move in with me?" Landon asked one day as they sat on the roof of his building, looking out at the lights of the city at night. "The apartment's big, and you spend most of your free time here
Lance
anyway."
is moving too quick, y'all.
Sage froze.
He ain't do his homework.
She looked at his
y'all.
profile in the light of the street lamps, at the kind eyes, at the genuine...
Let me show y'all. Another transgender, these looks, y'all. Look at that. Look at that. Alright?
Smile, and her heart clenched with pain and tenderness. I need to think of...
We call ourselves Boricua, a unique name honoring the vibrant spirit of our people. When you experience our island,
Every time...
So she knows she had it. Is that a charge, y'all? Should she be charged? Let's go.
She tried to start this conversation, the words stuck in her throat. Landon was waiting for her at the makeshift archway of fresh flowers. His eyes shone with happiness, and it made the guilt even more acute. Beside him stood Finn, his best man, his face impenetrable. Feeling her knees shake, her gaze slid over the faces of her guests, co-workers from Magnolia's, regulars from Landon's coffee shop, a few friends from the local LGBT community who'd supported her over the years. "You're beautiful," Landon whispered as she stood next to him. The ceremony passed like a blur. Sage mechanically repeated the words of her vows while her mind spun with thoughts of the medications hidden in her dresser drawer, the regular tests, the secret visits to Dr. Reed. At the wedding reception, held right in the open-air park, Finn gave a toast. His words about love and fidelity sounded oddly strained.
This is Lance's best friend right here, y'all.
"Here's to never having secrets between you two," he finished, looking intently at Sage. She felt a chill run down her spine. Finn had kept his eyes on her all evening, as if trying to solve some mystery. During the dance, he was suddenly at her side. "You know, I've known Landon for a long time," he began, lowering his voice. "He deserves honesty." Sage stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I can see that you're hiding something. I don't know what, but I see it in your eyes every time you look at him." "You're wrong," she tried to smile, but the smile came out crooked. Finn shook his head and stepped back to the bar. Sage stared after him, feeling panic rise to her throat. She apologized to her guests and quickly made her way to the bathroom stalls. In the small room, she pulled out her phone and dialed Dr. Reed's number. But at the last moment, she didn't press the call button. What could she say? That she married a man without telling him about her diagnosis? That now his best friend suspected something? "Honey, are you okay?" Landon's voice outside the door made her flinch. "The guests are asking about you."
Landon.
"Yeah, I'll be right out, just worried." The evening went on. They cut the cake, danced to live music from a local band, accepted congratulations. Landon never took a step away from her, constantly touching her hand, kissing her cheek, whispering honeymoon plans in her ear. As darkness fell, the garlands in the park were lit. Sage sat at the bridal table, watching the dancing guests. Dr. Reed was long gone. Finn stood off to the side, sipping whiskey and talking earnestly about something with one of Landon's friends. "What are you thinking about?" Landon took a seat next to her, putting his arm around her shoulders. "About how happy I am," she lied, feeling everything inside clench at that lie. The starry Texas sky spread out over the park. Somewhere in the distance, music was playing, people were laughing, the city was buzzing. And Sage sat in the arms of the man she loved and realized that she had trapped herself in a trap from which there was no easy way out. Landon sat in the doctor's office, absent-mindedly looking at the medical posters on the walls. A routine annual checkup to renew his health insurance. Nothing special. He was already making plans for the evening. Sage had promised to make her signature Louisiana gumbo. "Mr. Baker," the doctor's voice sounded unaccustomedly serious, "we need to talk about your test results." The next 10 minutes turned his world into chaos. The doctor's words came through the water column. Positive result. Further testing needed. Modern treatments. Landon sat there, clutching the armrests of his chair as his mind raced with one thought. How could this be possible? "Do you know when the infection might have occurred?" the doctor asked. Landon shook his head. He'd only had casual liaisons in recent years before meeting Sage, but he'd always been careful. And then it was just her. His wife. His love. The thought hit him like an electric shock. He remembered the pills in his dresser drawer, the regular visits to the doctor, her evasive answers to questions about her health. Everything fell into place with terrifying clarity. He drove home on autopilot, not noticing other cars or traffic lights. When he parked in front of their house in East Austin, he sat in the car for a long time, trying to control the trembling in his hands. Sage was making gumbo. The smell of spices filled the apartment, jazz playing softly from the speakers. She stood at the stove, stirring the soup, and smiled when she heard the front door open. "How was the checkup?" she asked without turning around. Landon silently placed the test results on the table. Sage turned around, saw the papers, and the smile slowly slid off her face. "When were you going to tell me?" His voice was quiet, but there was rage simmering in it. She recoiled from the stove like a blow. "Landon, when?" He pounded his fist on the table, papers scattering across the floor. "Before the wedding? After? Never?" "I tried. I wanted to. You knew. All this time you knew, and you kept quiet. Let me fall in love with you, marry you, make love to you. And all this time you knew."
That's a charge.
Sage leaned against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "I'm on medication. The viral load is undetectable. I thought..." "You thought what?" He was almost shouting now. "That it's okay to hide such a thing from the man you swore your love and loyalty to? That I don't have the right to know and decide for myself? I was afraid of losing you," she whispered. "Every time I tried to tell, I imagined you looking at me in disgust and walking away. And now? Is it better now? Now I'm supposed to look at you with love and gratitude for what you decided for me?" Something was sizzling on the stove. The gumbo was boiling over, but no one paid any attention to it. "Dr. Reed said I should tell you." Sage slid down the wall to the floor. "I went to see her every week, and she said, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Dr. Reed, your doctor knew about this? Who else knew? Finn? Is that why he was acting so weird at the wedding?" "No one else knew. Just Dr. Reed." Landon sank into a chair, wrapping his arms around his head. A heavy silence hung in the apartment, broken only by the hiss of boiling soup and Sage's quiet sobs. "I loved you," she finally said. "I do. That's the truth. Everything else was a lie, but not that. Love doesn't lie." He raised his eyes to her, full of pain and anger. "Love doesn't put another person in danger, doesn't steal his right to choose." He stood up and headed for the door. On the threshold, he turned around. "I'm not coming back tonight, and I don't know if I'll be back at all." The door slammed shut, and Sage was alone in an apartment that smelled of spice and betrayal. Her favorite Louisiana gumbo was burning on the stove, and pages of medical reports were scattered on the floor, evidence of her silence. Sage's body was found by her downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She had gone upstairs to complain about a leak. Water had been dripping from her bathroom ceiling all day. The apartment door appeared ajar. Sage?
This is how they found out Sage got murdered, y'all. This the neighbor downstairs.
Landon? She called out, crossing the threshold. A strange metallic odor hit her nose. The apartment was semi-dark. All the curtains were drawn. Mrs. Chen walked into the living room and froze. Sage was lying by the couch, her red hair strewn across the carpet. The overflowing bathtub continued to slowly flood the apartment. Detective Milo Green arrived on the scene 20 minutes after the 911 call. His shabby notebook was ready to take new notes. The corpse had already been photographed, and forensics was gathering evidence. "What do we got?" he asked the first patrolman who arrived. Sage Baker, 26 years old, multiple stab wounds, estimated time of death between midnight and 3 a.m. Green looked around the apartment. There were hardly any signs of a struggle, save for the overturned lamp. On the coffee table was an unfinished cup of tea. On the floor, scattered medical records. Husband? Green nodded at a photograph on the wall of a smiling couple standing against a lake. Landon Baker owns a coffee shop downtown. Trying to find him. Mrs. Chen was still sitting in the patrol car, wrapped in a plaid blanket. Green crouched down beside her. "Did you have much contact with Sage?" "Almost every day. Sweet girl. She and her husband only got married 3 months ago." She blotted her eyes with a handkerchief. "But the last few days, I've been hearing screams." "When exactly?" "The day before yesterday. Landon was yelling something about lying, betrayal. Sage was crying. Then he left, slamming the door." Green wrote down the statement and went back to the apartment. Forensics found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife thrown into the bathtub, smudged prints on the handle. In the bedroom, his attention was drawn to the dresser. The top drawer was pulled out, a scattering of pills, prescriptions in Sage's name, anti-retroviral therapy. Green made a mental note to check the victim's medical records. "But, Detective," the CSI called out to him, "there were traces of vomit found in the sink. Looks like she was vomiting shortly before she died." Green walked to the window. Morning Austin had a life of its own. People rushing to work, to coffee shops, to stores. No one suspected that tragedy had played out in the second-floor apartment. Sage's cell phone was found under the couch. The last messages were from someone named Finn. "We need to talk. It's about Landon." "Run the number," Green ordered, "and find me this Finn." By noon, forensics had finished their work in the apartment. The body had been taken to the morgue. Green stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the chalk outline on the floor. What had happened here during the night? Who had turned a family nest into a crime scene? A clock ticked on the wall, the only sound in the empty apartment. Next to it hung a picture from the wedding. Sage in a white dress.
He upset that he gave her AIDS, but he don't even know that she a transgender though, yo. That's the crazy part. He know for sure that he got HIV through his wife. But he don't even know his wife a transgender, y'all. That's the crazy part.
Happy Landon, and just off to the side, a scowling young man with tattoos on his arms. Green pulled out his cell phone. "Get me Dr. Reed on the phone. I need all the information I can get on patient Sage Baker." The day was just beginning, and the detective already had too many questions and too few answers. Where is Landon Baker now? Who was Finn? And what was behind the dead woman's medical history? Dr. Harper Reed's office resembled hundreds of other doctors' offices. The same diplomas on the walls, the same file folders, the same smell of antiseptic. Detective Green sat across from an older woman in a white coat who methodically laid out Sage Baker's medical history and
Louisiana, Dr. Reed began. Her previous doctor, Dr. Martinez from New Orleans, forwarded me the complete documentation. Sage started hormone therapy there, but the local community was not accepting of her transgender transition. After the attack, she decided to move to more tolerant Austin. Tell me about her health in general. Diagnosed with HIV back in Louisiana. presumably contracted during the assault. Sage was on a strict regimen of antiretroviral medication, tested regularly. Her viral load was undetectable. When was the last time you saw her? A week ago. She was desperate. Landon found out about her HIV status during a routine physical, but it wasn't just that. Sage was afraid he'd find out the whole truth about her past. He didn't know? Dr. Reed shook her head. She was going to tell. Came to me several times for advice, but the fear of losing him was stronger. From the clinic, Green headed to the Magnolia. The cafe manager, a full woman with kind eyes, wiped away tears with a paper napkin. When Sage came to settle in with us, she was honest about herself right away. We are proud to support the LGBT community. She was a great worker, the customers adored her. Were there any problems with customers? A couple times. One regular customer started making rude remarks to her when he found out, but we quickly resolved the issue by banning him from the cafe. Waiting for Green at the station was a folder of information from New Orleans. A police report from 3 years ago described a brutal attack on Sage outside a bar. No assailants had been found. Boss, a young patrolwoman peered into the office. We checked the...
Ladies and gentlemen, I got these OBD sensors, scanners, to sell too, ladies and gentlemen. Especially you females. I got these for sale. These going for $20, y'all. $20. Wondering what they are? You plug your car up when your engine light on and diagnose what's going on with your car before you take it to the shop. And they try to stick about this much frank up in you to tell you what it is. But you already had a code on what's wrong with your car, and you can look it up, price it, and take it from there. All right? $20, ladies and gentlemen. $20. Let's get back to the program.
Cameras. The night of the murder, Finn's car was in the parking lot from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Green leaned back in his chair, studying the photos.
Back here,
in the wedding photo, Sage was radiant with happiness. Tall, slender, with a mop of red hair, she looked like a woman who had finally found her place in life. Landon's coffee shop was next. Finn was wiping down tables, his movements nervous, twitchy. When did you learn the truth about Sage? At the wedding. Overheard her talk.
You can also take out that engine light. If you got a check engine light on, you can take it out with that and get your car inspected.
Talking to the doctor by accident. But that wasn't the point. I saw how much she loved Landon. The only thing that bothered me was that she was hiding her HIV status. Is that why you texted her? I wanted to talk. Convince her to tell Landon the truth.
Right.
I wanted to talk. Convince her to tell Landon the truth. About everything. That evening, poring over the evidence, Green reflected on the victim's complicated life. A young woman who'd survived a trauma in Louisiana, found a new home in Austin, built a new life and a new relationship, and all of that shattered in a matter of days. Phone rang. Morgue techs. They found a large dose of sleeping pills in the victim's blood. The body showed signs of recent hormone therapy and regular antiretroviral medication. Green laid out the crime scene photos on the table. Overturned lamp, scattered documents. Among them, an old driver's license from Louisiana. Sage's story was a story of fighting for the right to be herself, for the right to love and happiness, a story cut short too soon. The phone on the desk buzzed with a message from the patrolman. Landon's car was found in the parking lot of a motel in the suburbs. The room keys were there, but it was empty inside. The detective rubbed his tired eyes. Outside the window, night was falling on Austin, the city that had promised Sage a new life, but had become the place of her death. Dr. Reed sat in the interview room, placing a cardboard cup of cooled coffee on the table. Over the course of 3 hours of conversation, she told Detective Green a story that began long before the tragedy in Austin. Sage was born in a small town in Louisiana. Her childhood was difficult. When she first came to me, she showed me psychologists' reports, documentation of the beginning of her transition. She'd been receiving hormone therapy the whole time, but her hometown wouldn't accept it. Tell me about the assault. The doctor pulled a shabby folder from her bag. It happened outside a bar in New Orleans. 3 men. They found out about her transgender transition, beat her up, abused her. After that, she was diagnosed with HIV. Why Austin? There's a strong LGBT community here. She found a job, friends. Started a new life. In our sessions, Sage often said she felt safe for the first time. Was she in a relationship before she met Landon? No. She was afraid to get close to people. Landon was the exception. He saw her as just a woman, beautiful and intelligent. She blossomed around him. From the station, Green drove to the coffee shop. Finn was sullenly wiping down the tables, but let the detective in without objection. We're going to need the security footage from yesterday. The surveillance system appeared to be state-of-the-art. On the footage, Green saw Landon fly into the coffee shop after lunch. He's shaking, shouting something, waving some paperwork, apparently test results. Finn tries to calm him down, but Landon pushes his friend away. He returns a couple hours later, calmer and talking to Finn at length about something. In the back room, the detective finds crumpled plaid on the couch and evidence of a recent sleepover. Landon spent the night here? Yeah, last night. Came in around 7, wasn't himself. I gave him a plaid and a pillow, and this morning he was gone this morning. And you never saw him again? No, phone turned off, no answer to messages. Green went over the records once more. Something about Finn's behavior made him uneasy. In the footage, he looked too calm for a man whose best friend had just gone through such an upheaval. Back at the station, the detective spread the new documents out on the desk. Sage's story was becoming more and more tragic. A girl who had survived abuse and rejection, found love, and lost it for fear of revealing.
But you supposed to reveal if you got HIV and let that person decide if they want to engage with you. You understand me? You done affected this bad, you know what I mean? You didn't even tell him. See how y'all trying to flip the narrative now? God damn.
The truth. Forensics confirmed. The knife used to kill Sage had the fingerprints of at least 2 people on it. One set belonged to her. The other was still waiting to be identified. Detective Green placed 2 photos on the board. Landon Baker, victim's husband, coffee shop owner, disappeared after an argument. Finn Donovan is Landon's best friend, the last person to see him before he disappeared. We have 2 prime suspects, Green addressed.
Yes.
We have 2 prime suspects, Green addressed his team. Landon Baker had a direct motive. He just found out about his wife's HIV status. He had keys to the apartment and no alibi for the time of the murder. After the body was discovered, he disappeared. His car was found outside a motel on the outskirts of town. Green shifted his gaze to Finn's picture. And here's where the situation is more interesting. Finn Donovan may have acted out of a desire to protect a friend. His car was in the parking lot the night of the murder. Smudged prints were found on the knife. And most importantly, his testimony keeps changing. What exactly doesn't add up? The young officer asked. Green stepped up to the board. First of all, the time. He claims he spent the entire evening at the coffee shop, but the cameras show him leaving for 3 hours. Second, the conversation with the victim. First, he said he hadn't talked to Sage in the last few days. Then it turns out they talked on the phone an hour before the murder. The detective picked up the forensic report. A sleeping pill was found in the victim's blood. She took it voluntarily and just walked into the coffee shop. Shall we initiate an operation? As police cars surrounded the coffee shop, Morning Austin was just waking up. Green entered first. Finn was behind the counter, wiping down the coffee machine, a common morning action he'd been doing for years. Finn Donovan, the detective's voice echoed through the empty room. You're under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Sage Baker. Finn froze, but didn't look surprised. He slowly put down the towel and raised his hands, allowing his handcuffs to be put on. In the interrogation room, Green laid the photos in front of him. The bank camera footage, the bloody jacket, the forensics report on the prints on the knife. You want to tell me what happened that night? Finn was silent for a long time, looking at his hands. When he spoke, his voice sounded muffled. I loved him for 15 years, been around all those years, watched him fall in love with others, but I never saw him as happy as he was with Sage, and then I saw how she ruined his life. Is that why you decided to kill her? I didn't plan to. Went to her that night to talk to her. I wanted to convince her to leave, to disappear from his life. She let me in, turned on her damn jazz, said she loved him and wouldn't go anywhere. Green made a note in his notebook. Talking about her past, how she was afraid of losing Landon, and all I could see was his face the moment he learned the truth, his pain, his desperation. Finn ran his palms over his face. The knife just happened to be at hand. She didn't even fight back. Maybe she didn't believe I'd actually do it. And then there was just the sound of the water in the bathroom, where I was trying to wash the blood off. You hid the jacket in the vent? Yeah. Thought no one would find it. Stupid, right? Green pulled out the last photo, a shot of Landon and Finn outside a coffee shop that had just opened. They were smiling, full of hope for the future. Where's Landon? I don't know, I swear I don't know. He just disappeared after he found out about the diagnosis. Probably couldn't stay in a town where everything reminded him of her. And you stayed. Opened the coffee shop every morning like nothing happened. That's all I have left of him. As Finn was being led away, he suddenly turned around. You know what the worst part is? She really loved him. For real. And I just couldn't deal with it. Later, filling out the report, Green thought about how sometimes love turns into an obsession that can ruin lives. About Sage, whose fear of losing the one she loved led to tragedy. About Landon, who was somewhere trying to start a new life. And about Finn, whose 15 years of unrequited love has turned into a murder weapon. Outside the precinct window, Austin was habitually buzzing. Somewhere in the city, coffee shops were opening. People were rushing to work, falling in love, making plans. And in the holding cell, Finn Donovan waited for the trial that would determine the price of his obsession.
Remember.
Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Just wanted to share that with the peoples. You understand me? All right, y'all, school letting out. It was a pleasure. All right? Until the next time, peoples. 21 gun salute.